Welcome. We're about to embark on an extensive examination of the source material around, well, arguably the world's most famous pseudonymous artist, Banksy.
There's really no one else quite like him.
No. Our mission today is a really in-depth exploration of the information surrounding his identity, which is so tightly guarded. We want to map the evolution of his career, analyze his political statements, and try to make sense of the paradox of his commercial success.
And the sources we have are incredibly rich. They trace his activity all the way from the 1990s right up to, well, very recent events in 2025.
It's a huge amount of ground to cover.
It is. Banksy really exists in this unique space, doesn't he? He's at the intersection of illegal graffiti, potent activism, and, blue-chip, high-value art.
He challenges our core assumptions about everything, about authorship, about value.
And about the permanence of art itself. The documentation we have really provides a roadmap through that journey, showing an artist who built this multi-million-dollar brand based on the idea that big brands and centralized power are, well, fundamentally corrupt.
It's a remarkable feat. So we have to begin this exploration by addressing the central mystery that really powers his entire operation. Who exactly is Banksy?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The sources consistently describe him as an England-based street artist, a political activist, and also, interestingly, a film director.
But the key thing, his real name and identity, they remain entirely unconfirmed. It's the subject of just constant global speculation.
And this anonymity, it isn't just a stylistic choice. The sources are very clear that it's vital to him. Fundamentally, the medium he chose, graffiti, is an illegal activity.
Right. He could be arrested.
Exactly. So he has to stay hidden.
We have managed to pull a few sort of fragmented glimpses of the man from the early days, though. There was a 2003 interview with The Guardian, which gave one of the earliest physical descriptions.
Oh, right. I remember this one.
He was described as, and I'm quoting here, white, 28, scruffy casual jeans, T-shirt, a silver tooth, silver chain, and silver earring.
The writer even suggested he looked like a blend of Jimmy Nail and Mike Skinner from the streets.
It paints a picture of a pretty typical young man from that British underground scene. Almost unremarkable.
And that anonymity, it almost slipped a little bit, didn't it? In late 2023, an old BBC interview from 2003 was rediscovered.
Yes, this was a huge find.
The reporter, Nigel Wrench, he kind of put him on the spot. He asked him if his name was Robert Banks.
And Banksy's response was direct. He just said his forename was Robbie.
It was maybe a verbal slip, but that one piece of direct audio evidence, it really fueled the fire under what has become the most persistent claim of all.
And that, of course, is the Robin Gunningham speculation. Our sources detail Gunningham as being born on July 28, 1974, in Yate, which is a town about 12 miles outside of Bristol.
And Bristol is key here. It's the recognized epicenter of Banksy's whole formative period.
The evidence for the Gunningham theory, it goes way beyond just stories from old schoolmates at Bristol Cathedral School.
Oh, much further. The most compelling piece of objective evidence comes from a 2016 study. Researchers at Queen Mary University used these sophisticated geographic profiling techniques.
Geographic profiling, that's what they use in criminology, right? To track serial offenders.
Exactly that. Or in epidemiology to map where disease outbreaks originate. They applied that same logic here.
So how does that actually work for art? What data were they tracking?
Well, they weren't just looking at the final location of the art. They correlated the locations of over 190 confirmed Banksy works across both Bristol and London.
And they mapped that against Gunningham's movements.
Precisely. Against a list of his known addresses, businesses he registered, even properties owned by his friends and family. They created a sort of density map.
Like a heat map of his life.
It relies on this center of gravity theory, that most of your activity will cluster around your home or your workplace. And the statistical correlation they found between where the art appeared and Gunningham's known movements, it was exceptionally high.
So it's not proof, but it moves the speculation closer to a kind of statistical probability.
It strongly suggests they're the same individual.
And the theory around the name's origin, that ties in neatly too. Gunningham reportedly started using the name Robin Banks.
Which you can see how that just smoothly evolves into Banksy.
And then we get another little slip years later. In 2017, the DJ Goldie was on a podcast talking about Banksy, and he just let the name Rob slip out before quickly correcting himself.
It's these tiny fragments, but when you put them all together, they build a really strong cumulative case.
Of course, Gunningham isn't the only name that comes up.
No, not at all. The sources also mention other prominent possibilities, the speculation around Robert Del Naja.
3D from Massive Attack.
Yes. That's a persistent one. Del Naja was a graffiti artist himself in Bristol back in the 80s, and he's known to be a personal friend of Banksy.
So what's the theory there?
Yeah.
That he is Banksy or that he's involved somehow?
Some sources suggest Banksy might be more of a collective, and that Del Naja could be the logistical head, executing some works or guiding the overall strategy. It's another layer to the mystery.
And then you get into the stranger stuff, the hoaxes and the cases of, I guess you call it accidental identity theft.
Like the former Art Attack presenter Neil Buchanan.
Right. That was a huge thing on social media. He had to issue this very strong denial.
But the truly bizarre case is the local councillor Billy Gannon in Pembroke Dock in 2022.
That story is incredible. It really shows the corrosive effect of this whole Banksy myth.
The speculation in his small town just became so intense that he eventually resigned from his post in local government.
And his statement, it just perfectly captures the impossible situation he was in. He said, "I'm being asked to prove who I am not, and the person that I am not may not exist."
I mean, how am I supposed to prove that I'm not somebody who doesn't exist? Just how do you do that? It's a kind of existential crisis caused by a street artist.
It really reinforces the immense pressure this anonymity puts on anyone even remotely connected to him.
It does.
But this identity myth, it wouldn't exist without the work itself. So let's turn to the actual artistic origins that built this entire movement. Banksy was active in that Bristol underground scene from the 1990s, inspired by local pioneers.
People like 3D, as we mentioned, Nick Walker and Inky, they were the trailblazers.
And his earliest career phase, say between 1990 and 1994, was pretty traditional, right?
Very traditional freehand graffiti. He was part of the Dry Bread Z crew, or DBZ. But the crucial shift, the one that changed everything, came around the year 2000.
That's when he moved to stenciling.
Almost entirely.
And the story of how that happened it's become iconic in itself.
It has. He claims he adopted the stencil technique after he was forced to hide from the police under a rubbish lorry.
And he was stuck under there for a long time.
For an agonizingly long time, just looking up at the chassis of the vehicle. And he noticed the stenciled serial number.
And that was the light bulb moment.
It was a moment of pure technical revelation. He realized that stenciling allowed for exponentially faster execution compared to freehand painting.
Which is everything in that world. In an environment where the risk of arrest is constant, speed is the most important factor.
Absolutely. Stencils let an artist pre-cut complex images in the safety of a studio and then just deploy them rapidly on site. It vastly reduces your exposure time. This technical innovation is what let him scale up his operations so widely and so quickly.
And that speed enabled his first known large mural, The Mild, Mild West, painted back in 1997 in Stokescroft, Bristol.
A foundational piece.
It really is. It shows this calm, almost cute teddy bear facing off against 3 heavily armored riot police.
But the bear is in the middle of lobbing a Molotov cocktail.
Exactly. It perfectly encapsulates that early signature style. That juxtaposition of something innocent or humorous with this sharp anti-establishment violence.
Yeah. And that blend, that dark humor and piercing political critique, that is the definition of Banksy's style. It's satirical street art combined with these subversive epigrams, all delivered through that very distinctive stenciling.
And the message is almost never ambiguous, is it? It's consistently anti-war, anti-capitalist.
Anti-fascist, anti-establishment. It's a critique of centralized power structures in general.
He uses this recurring cast of characters as powerful symbols. We see rats, apes, policemen, soldiers, children, the elderly.
They function as these universal figures.
I want to ask specifically about the rats and apes. Why those two?
Well, Banksy uses rats because they're the ultimate urban survivors. They're scorned, they're ignored, but they're everywhere, and they're incredibly resilient. He has this famous quote,
"If you are dirty, insignificant, and unloved,
then rats are the ultimate role model. They symbolize the underground, the powerless majority, fighting back from below.
And the apes."
Apes often function as a critique of humanity itself. You'll see them depicted wearing sandwich boards with slogans like, "Laugh now, but one day I'll be in charge."
They represent a kind of impending collapse of society.
Exactly. The idea that history is repeating itself or that we're devolving.
His first steps into institutional recognition, or maybe institutional provocation, came with his early exhibitions. In 2002, he had his first LA show called Existentialism.
And that was followed by Turf War in London in 2003, which was just designed to shock and generate conversation.
That was the one with the live animals.
Yes. It was notorious for including works painted directly onto live farm animals. It drew significant protests from animal rights activists.
Though it's worth noting, the RSPCA, The Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals declared the conditions were suitable for them.
They did, but Banksy was using that controversy to make a point about the spectacle of modern life. But just as much, he was drawing media attention to his message.
The institutional critique got even sharper in 2005 with his Subverted Masterpieces series. Here, he's directly confronting the sanctity of traditional art history.
He's altering famous oil paintings. Take his modification of Claude Monet's Water Lily Pond.
A very serene, famous landscape.
He takes that landscape and he adds elements of urban detritus. Litter, a traffic cone, and a shopping trolley, all floating among the lilies.
He's not just defacing it. He's commenting on the disconnect between that pastoral ideal of the Impressionists and the stark reality of modern environmental decay.
The consumer waste that now dominates our actual landscapes. He's updating the masterpiece for the modern world.
And he did something similar with Edward Hopper's classic American painting, Nighthawks.
Yes, he brings modern social disorder into a scene that traditionally symbolizes urban alienation.
Hopper's original is so quiet, so lonely.
Exactly. And Banksy redraws the scene, but now one of the cafe patrons is looking out at a British football hooligan who has just thrown something, it looks like a chair, through the window.
The violence just shatters the calm.
He injects this unpredictable, lowbrow chaos directly into highbrow institutional isolation. These pieces force the art history canon to absorb contemporary social issues.
This kind of high-stakes provocation often leads him into these legal gray areas that he seems to just relish.
The creation of his spoof British 10-pound notes in 2004 is a perfect example. He's blending art, illegal imitation, and financial critique all into one object.
These notes replace the Queen's head with the image of Princess Diana.
And substituted the text Bank of England with Banksy of England.
The move was immediately controversial because he was deliberately pushing the boundaries of monetary law.
And he distributed them in these very public, chaotic ways, throwing wads of them into the crowd at the Notting Hill Carnival.
And including them as invitations to his Santa's Ghetto exhibition.
And we should be clear here, based on the source material, that reproducing images of banknotes like this is a criminal offense under the UK's Forgery and Counterfeiting Act of 1981.
The Bank of England still holds the copyright.
Yet that very illegality is what transformed them into instant objects of extreme value.
The notes were highly prized, especially the uncut sheets. One set of those notes sold in 2007 at auction for £24,000.
So the illegal Anti-Establishment Act of counterfeiting currency immediately converts into extraordinary capital within the very system he's critiquing. It's a perfect loop.
That duality, that tension between tragedy and corporate branding, it reaches a real fever pitch in his print Napalm, Can't Beat That Feeling, from 2004.
This is a crucial work for understanding his philosophy.
I would say it's arguably his most devastating political statement in print form.
It is. The piece appropriated that universally recognized 1972 Pulitzer Prize-winning photo by Nick Ut, the one that captured the 9-year-old girl, Phan Thanh Kim Phuc.
Screaming in agony, running naked from a napalm attack in Vietnam, it's an image of profound human suffering.
And Banksy takes this image, and he places that terrified girl between two of the most recognizable and relentlessly cheerful corporate icons on the planet, Ronald McDonald and Mickey Mouse.
The irony is just excruciating.
They're holding her hands, smiling, doing this sort of corporate parade gesture, completely oblivious to her terror and her pain. They symbolize the cultural invasiveness and moral blindness of global consumerism.
By forcing the tragic subject into this bizarre, forced embrace with symbols of Western manufactured joy.
He's asking how the world can simultaneously process immense suffering while prioritizing frivolous consumer culture. It's a direct accusation against our capacity for cognitive dissonance.
And the scope of this Work 150 signed and 500 unsigned copies meant this specific, unsettling critique was distributed very widely, really cementing its status as a major work in his career.
And following those early provocative shows, the commercial market just absolutely exploded around Banksy's work.
It happened so fast.
The phenomenon became so pronounced that the journalist Max Foster actually coined the term the Banksy effect back in 2006.
What did he mean by that?
He was describing the surging interest and the corresponding rise in value for all street artists, really, following Banksy's initial success. He lifted the whole genre.
And his own ascension into the fine art world was just unprecedented. Christina Aguilera bought works for £25,000 in those early years.
But the first true marker of his establishment status was the 2006 Sotheby's sale.
That was a watershed moment.
It was. A set of Kate Moss paintings sold for £50,400, which was 5 times the pre-sale estimate.
And right after that, a green Mona Lisa stencil sold for £57,600.
By 2007, his value had just completely decoupled from his anti-establishment roots. Sotheby's sold Bombing Middle England for over £102,000.
And then Space Girl and Bird set a new record, fetching £288,000. That was 20 times its original estimate.
He had officially vaulted into the echelon of high-value commodities, almost against his own stated principles.
And it's precisely at this moment, this point of critical mass, that he triggers his own direct artistic critique of the very market he was benefiting from.
Yes, to coincide with those 2007 auctions, Banksy updated his website with a now-famous image.
The image depicted an auction house scene full of bidders in tuxedos, frantically raising their paddles.
And they were bidding on a framed picture that contained just one solitary, brutally sarcastic sentence.
I can't believe you morons actually buy this shit.
Huh? It's pure anti-consumerist theater.
But it raises the central analytical challenge of his whole career. Was this a genuine rejection of the market, or was the market just consuming the critique and transforming it into part of the commodity's appeal?
That is the crucial question, isn't it? He's always maintained this anti-capitalist posture. He famously said, "We can't do anything to change the world until capitalism crumbles. In the meantime, we should all go shopping to console ourselves."
So if his art generates millions, does the critique justify the cost, or does the high price just co-opt the entire critique?
The sources suggest the market doesn't care about the message. It only cares that the message is famous and rare. The act of self-criticism only makes the object more valuable because it adds a layer of conceptual complexity, a layer of history.
We see that same tension again in the environmental critique in his piece, Show Me the Monet from 2005.
The modification of Monet's work, the one with the shopping carts and traffic cone.
That sold for an astronomical £7.5 million in 2020.
And Banksy was explicit about this piece. He stated that the vandalized paintings reflect life now, where big business, not graffiti writers, does the real damage.
He pointed the finger at, and I'm quoting, exactly the people who put gold-framed pictures of landscapes on their walls and try to tell the rest of us how to behave.
And the £7.5 million price tag means that one of those people now owns the critique itself. It suggests capitalism can just digest and neutralize even the most acidic anti-capitalist gestures.
Nothing embodies this paradox, quite like the notorious incident with Love is in the Bin in 2018.
Ah, the ultimate prank.
The original work, Balloon Girl, sold for £1 million at Sotheby's, but the sale was immediately disrupted in the most spectacular way possible.
The moment the gavel came down, an alarm sounded. A shredder, which had been secretly built into the frame years before, just activated and partially destroyed the canvas.
It shredded the bottom half of the image into strips right there in the auction room.
Banksy quickly released a video explaining he'd fitted the shredder years prior, and he quoted that philosophical idea, "The urge to destroy is also a creative urge."
Which is typically attributed to the anarchist Mikhail Bakunin.
Right. But the sentiment supported his action perfectly. The intention, clearly, was to destroy the art the moment it achieved its maximum commercial value, to negate the sale.
But if the act of destruction only increased the price, wasn't the philosophical statement completely negated? Did he accidentally prove the market is indestructible?
He essentially proved that in the contemporary art world, the artist's action, regardless of intent, is the primary driver of value. Sotheby's recognized this immediately. They declared that Banksy didn't destroy an artwork, he created one.
And the buyer, an unnamed European woman, decided to go ahead with the purchase.
The partially shredded work was then authenticated by Banksy's own organization, Pest Control, as a new piece.
With a new title, Love is in the Bin.
And the subsequent value confirmed the market's voracious appetite for this kind of spectacle. That new piece sold in 2021 for an unbelievable £18,582,000, a new record for him.
So the act of attempted self-destruction just maximized its value by turning it into a historic piece of performance art.
The paradox is complete. The critique, the destruction, the irony, it all just fuels the capital engine.
Banksy frequently uses his fame and his methods to spotlight very complex geopolitical and social issues. One of his most notable and frankly dangerous early interventions was in 2005 when he traveled to the Palestinian territories.
And created 9 images directly on the Israeli West Bank barrier wall.
These weren't just simple tags. They were potent, large-scale visual puns designed to undermine the wall's symbolic purpose.
Things like a ladder extending up and over the top of the wall, or an image of children digging a hole right through the concrete.
He was using his art to suggest permeability, defiance, a refusal to accept the boundary as absolute.
They served as these very powerful visual symbols of resistance.
A decade later, he addressed the destruction in the Gaza Strip after the conflict in 2015. He created several works there, right in the middle of the ruins.
Including a kitten spray-painted on the remains of a house that had been destroyed.
It seems like a strange choice. Why a kitten in such a desolate place?
Well, his publicist provided Banksy's rationale, and it speaks directly to that attention economy we were just discussing. Banksy explained, "I wanted to highlight the destruction in Gaza by posting photos on my website, but on the internet people only look at pictures of kittens."
So he was deliberately using frivolous, easily shareable content to force you to look at the devastation in the background.
Exactly. And he used that attention to deliver a very severe political comment. He said that seeing entire neighborhoods reduced to rubble with no hope, that what you're really looking at is a vast outdoor recruitment center for terrorists.
That's a profound statement. Using the soft image of a kitten to deliver a harsh security assessment of a humanitarian crisis.
And this commitment to the region led him to finance and create the walled-off hotel in Bethlehem in 2017.
This isn't just an art installation. It's a functioning hotel, open to the public, where every single room has a view of the separation wall.
The hotel itself is the artwork. It contains pieces by Banksy and Palestinian artists. It's described as offering the worst view in the world.
But its purpose isn't tourism, not in the traditional sense. It's a deliberate provocation and a platform for dialogue.
His philanthropic efforts are also very strongly tied to refugee support. He donated the sculpture Dreamboat from his satirical amusement park, Dismaland,
to the charity Help Refugees, which now operates as Choose Love.
a substantial asset for a cause dedicated to immediate assistance.
In 2020, he ramped up these efforts. He sold the triptych Mediterranean Sea View 2017.
Which was modified romantic landscape paintings, but with life jackets washed up on the shore, a clear reference to the migrant crisis.
And it sold for £2 million, with the funds going to a Bethlehem hospital.
And then perhaps his most direct involvement came in August 2020 when he privately funded a dedicated rescue boat.
Renamed the Louise Michel after the French anarchist.
And deployed specifically to rescue refugees attempting that dangerous crossing of the Mediterranean. His commitment goes beyond just making art about the problem. He is actively funding solutions.
Shifting to domestic social commentary, we have that highly controversial opening couch gag he created for The Simpsons in 2010.
A radical intervention into mass media, especially when you consider the global reach of The Simpsons.
The sequence depicted these deplorable, sweatshop-like working conditions. A filthy, windowless factory.
It suggested that the animation cells and all the merchandise were being produced using slave labor, even using endangered or mythical animals.
And Banksy's name was spray-painted right across the opening sequence. A defiant signature.
Fox Network did sanitize parts of it for taste, but Banksy later released the original uncensored storyboard online. He noted the whole process led to delays, disputes, and a threatened walkout by the animation department.
It really showed the friction when corporate entertainment is forced to confront its own alleged ethical supply chain issues.
Then during the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, he turned his attention to supporting health workers. He created Painting for Saints, also known as Game Changer.
This was a tribute to the staff of the National Health Service, the NHS, in the UK.
The painting depicted a small child playing with a nurse superhero doll while Batman and Spider-Man lay discarded in a bin nearby.
A really powerful image. It later sold for a staggering £14.4 million, a record at the time, with all the proceeds benefiting NHS charities.
It just demonstrates his capacity to leverage his commercial value for genuine public good.
Returning to environmental critique, in 2018 he created Season's Greetings in Port Talbot, Wales, an industrial town.
The mural was so clever. It was designed to use the corner of a garage. On one side, you see a child catching what looks like falling snow on their tongue.
A moment of seasonal innocence.
But then you look around the corner at the adjoining wall and you see the disturbing reality. The snow is actually smoke and embers billowing out of a dumpster fire.
A direct, localized commentary on industrial pollution and air quality.
And the immediate reaction highlights that paradox of street art valuation. The owner of the garage, Ian Lewis, reported losing sleep over fears the image would be vandalized or stolen.
He needed security guards, a plastic screen.
Before the mural was eventually moved to a gallery for protection, a public artwork meant to comment on the community's plight instantly becomes this vulnerable, multi-million-pound asset requiring round-the-clock security.
His engagement with international politics continued right up to the Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022.
A very dangerous and symbolic trip. He confirmed creating 6 murals in war-torn sites like Borodianka.
And one image in particular, the one showing Vladimir Putin being judo-flipped by a small boy, was especially resonant.
That image of the smaller figure defeating the massive symbol of state power was later turned into an official postage stamp by Ukraine. His art immediately transitioned into national iconography.
And we even have a very recent intervention documented in the sources from 2025 in London.
Yes, the mural on the Royal Courts of Justice, the heart of the British judicial system. It depicted a judge beating a protester with a gavel.
The location made it incredibly controversial, appearing during a period of intense public debate about the prosecutions of climate and social justice protesters.
The commentary was clearly aimed at the perceived heavy-handedness of the courts.
And the reaction from the authorities was swift and absolute. The sources confirm the work was covered up the very same day.
With a large metal sheet and fencing, and then removed entirely just 2 days later, that tension between the power of his statement and the attempts by institutions to immediately erase it is just constant. Which brings us to the inevitable fate of the majority of Banksy's street art, which is, well, damage, removal, or destruction.
The transient nature of his medium, public outdoor spaces, means so many works are quickly defaced or destroyed, often before they can even be protected.
It's the nature of the beast.
We should take a moment here to address the human and community cost of this. When the slave labor mural, the one with the child sewing Union Jack bunting, was removed from a store in Wood Green, London,
And then appeared for sale in a Miami auction catalog in 2013.
the local community reacted with immediate and what the sources call palpable anger.
And you have to feel for them. They felt they had been robbed of a cultural landmark. It was a piece intended as public art, a social critique for everyone. Its removal was seen as a profound theft of public property.
It really highlights that conflict between private ownership and public cultural value.
It does. And though the piece was later withdrawn from auction, the incident really solidified this idea that Banksy's success only accelerates the destruction of his own street legacy.
The list of lost works is just sobering. In Melbourne, his parachuting rat was accidentally destroyed by plumbers installing pipes.
And even more sadly, Gorilla in a pink mask in Bristol, which had been a beloved landmark for a decade, was unwittingly painted over by a cultural center in 2011.
And the GCHQ spy booth, a high-profile critique of government surveillance, just vanished during renovations to the building it was on.
Beyond the physical destruction, Banksy has faced significant critical response about his artistic integrity, particularly accusations of copying.
The Blick-Lorat issue.
Yes. He's been repeatedly criticized for borrowing, or some say outright copying, the stenciling style of the French graffiti artist Blick-Lorat, who pioneered the technique in Paris back in the 1980s.
Now, Blick-Lorat has generally been quite gracious about it, hasn't he? He's praised Banksy's role in elevating urban art.
He has, but he also admitted in the documentary Graffiti Wars that some of Banksy's more derivative pieces made him angry. He said, it's difficult to find a technique and style in art, so when you have a style and you see someone else is taking it, you don't like that.
And this feeds into a deeper debate within the street art world about the legitimacy of stencils at all.
Right. Some purists in the graffiti community still see stenciling as cheating compared to the complex, dangerous, time-consuming work of freehand. So Banksy is simultaneously lauded for his cultural impact and dismissed by purists for his methods.
This brings us to the profound legal paradox of his entire career, the trademark fight.
He needs absolute anonymity to protect himself from the law for his illegal acts.
But he needs a legal identity, or something like it, to shield his brand and images from commercial exploitation.
And in 2019, this paradox came to a head. He faced a trademark dispute with a greeting card company, Full Color Black, which was profiting from unauthorized reproductions of his work.
And they challenged his EU trademark for the flower thrower image on the grounds that he wasn't actively using it commercially.
So Banksy's response was, of course, theatrical. To prove active use, he opened the gross domestic product pop-up shop in Croydon.
A temporary installation just to demonstrate he was using his trademark in a retail capacity.
Because trademark law dictates that if you're not genuinely using the mark, you can lose it to someone who will.
But the ultimate ruling in 2020 by the European Union Intellectual Property Office was a major defeat for him.
A huge defeat. They ruled his trademark claim was invalid because it had been filed in bad faith.
What does that mean in a legal sense?
It means the filing was undertaken not for genuine commercial use, but as a deliberate strategy to exploit the trademark system. In this case, to get around using traditional copyright laws, which would have required him to reveal his true identity.
And the ruling explicitly cited Banksy's own previous statement that copyright is for losers as evidence of his intent.
The judges concluded the pop-up shop was a cynical performance, not genuine commercial intent. It just perfectly illustrates the impossibility of trying to protect a multi-million-dollar brand that is intentionally built on a foundation of illegality and anonymity.
And that battle is still ongoing. The sources note his legal team is due to attend a tribunal at the UK's Intellectual Property Office in 2025 to continue this fight.
The market demands protection, but the art demands anonymity. He can't have both.
So we've completed this extensive examination, and we've traced this fascinating dual existence of Banksy, the subversive, anonymous vandal who has consistently critiqued power and commerce, versus the record-setting, multi-million-pound commodity whose every move only seems to amplify his own commercial value.
What really stands out across all these sources is that Banksy has mastered the concept of cultural relevance. His works consistently hit the central nerves of global society.
He addresses anti-consumerism, authority, environmental decay, major global conflicts.
And he forces you to confront these overwhelming topics instantly. The tension between the ephemeral nature of street art, which is designed to be temporary, and the permanence sought through high-value auctions and trademarks. That is absolutely central to his complicated and lasting legacy.
Before we conclude, we should leave you with one final thought, drawn from a profound analogy Banksy once referenced in his own writings.
He quoted a passage originally credited to Lieutenant Colonel Mervyn Willick-Donen.
The story describes the scene after the liberation of the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp in 1945. A shipment arrived containing, among other supplies, thousands of tubes of bright red lipstick.
And Donen wrote that the lipstick wasn't essential for survival, of course, but its effect was instantaneous and transformative. The internees began to use it to reclaim their identity, their dignity, their humanity, after the sheer scale of the atrocity had stripped them bare.
It was a fleeting flash of color that helped them retain some collective humanity.
It's a powerful image.
So we'll leave you to consider this. Given all the legal fights, the criticisms of his work, and the constant threat of his art being erased by authorities or consumed by the market, does Banksy's work function today as a similar mechanism? A fleeting flash of color or wit delivered to a public overwhelmed by social and political decay, helping us retain some sense of collective humanity amidst the chaos. Thanks for listening.